Welcome back to
The Hot Pot. I'm Princess May, aka the Princess.
And I'm Tracy, aka the DJ.
This month, we recognize and celebrate AA and NHPI Heritage Month, a time for us to recognize our community's contributions, cultures, and heritage. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities are culturally and linguistically diverse people.
Yeah, so in today's episode, we're doing something special in celebration. We hope to showcase just some of the rich culture and heritage of our communities. So Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month originated in 1977 when Representatives Frank Horton of New York and Norman Mineta of California called upon the president to proclaim the first 10 days of May as Asian Pacific Heritage Week. Then in October 1978, President Jimmy Carter expanded the observance as an annual celebration, and 12 years later, President George H.W. Bush extended the week-long celebration to a month. And the official designation of May as AAPI Heritage Month was signed into law in 1992. And so the month of May was chosen to observe AAPI members for a number of reasons, including to commemorate the first Japanese who came to the country in May of 1843, and to mark May 1869 completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, which involved the labor of many Chinese immigrants. And recently there's been a push to include Native Hawaiians in the designation as well, so now it's officially known as AA NHPI Heritage Month.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tracy, for going into a little bit of the history of AA and NHPI Heritage Month. That's not something I was really aware of, so it's great to learn more about it. And during AA and NHPI Heritage Month, there's so many leaders, activists, and artists to highlight this month. You mentioned Norman Mineta, who recently passed away. I just want to take some time to honor his legacy. Though his family and himself were placed in an internment camp during World War II, which would understandably make most Japanese Americans and Asian Americans want nothing to do with the government. Instead, Mineta wanted to make this a better country for all and dedicated his life to public service.
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, he not only helped create AA and NHPI Heritage Month, but also co-founded the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies and the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. And he was the mayor of San Jose and then a congressman, and notably was the first Asian American to serve as a cabinet member under both Bill Clinton and George W. Bush.
Norman Mineta broke barriers, was a change maker, and left a legacy that will not be forgotten.
Speaking of change makers and influential leaders, Dr. Haunani Ki Trask is another person we wanted to highlight. So Dr. Trask was a scholar, activist, author, and poet. And as one of the founders of the Hawaii sovereignty movement, she inspired generations of Hawaiians to take back space in academia, politics, and their cultural landscape. She was also the founding director of Kamakakuo Kalani Center of Hawaiian Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and she encouraged younger generations of Hawaiians or Kanaka attending the university to embrace their heritage. And last year, before her passing, she was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, among the nation's oldest and most prestigious honorary societies. And it's one of the highest honors bestowed in academia. So her legacy continues to live in the hearts and minds of those she's touched.
As we look to the present and future, we have to mention Teresa Singh, building on their past work and legacy. Teresa wears many hats as a queer poet, artist, educator, community organizer. She's spoken at the White House and the UN Conference on Climate Change in Paris, and also received President Obama's Champions of Change in 2012. Here's a clip of her in action.
Someone will touch the earth. Once I wanted my own soil. Tried to drown my ankles in myself again. Daughter of Oceania wanting me home. My skin is sacred ground. Always want to take a white girl's skin. I cried so hard until I became a boat. I never want to be lost at high tide. Daughter of ancestors' language tatted on my skin. My skin, what's mine, more than an ocean floating above myself at sea. Open mouth sun on my body. My story will breathe. Someone will always want my skin. Touch the earth to take what's mine. Once, I wanted a white girl's skin more than my own soil. I cried so hard, an ocean tried to drown my ankles until I became a boat floating above myself, in myself. I never want to be lost at sea again. Daughter of Oceania at high tide. Daughter of open-mouthed sun wanting me home. Ancestors' language tatted on my body. My skin is sacred ground. On my skin, my story will breathe.
Yeah, that poem definitely gave me chills the first time I saw her read it. And there are just so many important people in our history, but we couldn't possibly cover all of them in this episode. So we encourage you to check out a toolkit Princess May and I created for more information on celebrating and recognizing AA and HPI Heritage Month. We'll link it in the description of this video. Princess May, what are some ways you celebrated this past month?
We're about mid-month now in May, and honestly, I just scrolled through social media and read the stories, highlights, and posts about AA and NHPI people and organizations and what they've shared so far. And so there are many great events being put on by various organizations. It's also really cool to see the White House being involved in programming. What are you doing this month, Tracy?
Yeah, I also attended some virtual events and just participated in discussions about our AA and HPI communities, identities, and history, and how we see ourselves in the future. And that was really interesting. And also just learning more on my own, because there's just like so much to learn and digest. And taking on a personal level, I've been asking my parents more questions about my own family's history, just because I realized how much I didn't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Families or parents and grandparents are great storytellers and great people to learn from about our own history. Again, because May is almost over, it doesn't mean the celebration and recognition stops.
Yep, you're exactly right.
There's still conversations and experience that should be shared, including increased awareness and education about issues that affect AA and NHPI people.
Yeah, and that was a big motivation for us to start this podcast in the first place.
Exactly. And on that note, thank you everyone for watching, and stay tuned for next month's episode.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
It's the Hot Pot Show. Don't you know it's Princess and Tracy? It's the Hot Pot Show. It's time to go. Are you